Egypt is in the throes of crisis, the Arab Street is up in flames, and India is being accused of fence setting. What should the posture of the Indian government be? Has the Indian government approached this crisis in the correct fashion? For perspective, I'm joined today by former External Affairs Minister, Mr. Jaswant Singh. Thank you very much, sir, for granting us this interview. I want to begin by understanding from you your own assessment of the current situation that we're seeing unfold in Egypt and across the Middle East.
Yes, indeed. I personally think it's a situation of great gravity, and it has enormous consequences for the entire, not just Arabian world. Therefore, your query about posture, I would rephrase it. It's not posture or the government of India that I'm concerned about. It's really the policy, because what policy today determines the approach with which the present government of India is addressing this major challenge to the entire Arabian world in reality. Because what happens in Egypt happens in the rest of Arabia. Reflect, please, for a moment that we have turbulence in Pakistan, we have turbulence in Afghanistan, Iran, Iraq, the entire Arabian Peninsula, and the Maghreb. You have Tunisia, you have Egypt now. Yemen has just announced, President Saleh has said, neither my son nor I, we are not going to contest election. You just heard what Jordan has done with Hamas ascendant in Palestine, with Israel having suffered at the hands of Hezbollah in Lebanon. This is a major challenge to India's statecraft, India's national interest, India's policy in regard to this entire Arabian world. Is it to be governed by timidity? Is India to be timid in the face of this major challenge to India's national interest? Are we going to merely be camp followers to some other country's interests? I find it extremely troubling. Silence is not policy. Timidity cannot be a replacement for proper, correctly judged, timely action by a country like India.
So far, India has mostly been silent, as you said. Even the statements that we've seen have been very ambiguous. We've seen the United States, a key ally of Egypt, take a stance, ask Hosni Mubarak to ensure there's a peaceful transition. Even the Turkish Prime Minister, sir, has said that Hosni Mubarak's time is up. Do you think India is absolutely incorrect in sitting on the fence and saying it's an internal matter for the government of Egypt to deal with, and therefore India doesn't want to get involved?
That it is something that Egypt has to address is perfectly understandable. Of course, Egypt has to address it. India can't go and address the question there. But if you sit for too long on a fence, the fence enters your soul. Sitting on the fence cannot be policy. You have to, in situations of grave challenge to national interests. There are Indian national interests involved here. I've just attempted to draw you a sketch map of the turmoil, either potential or real, that this entire Islamic world, from Pakistan to Maghreb, all the way up to Tunisia and beyond, is likely to enter into. Sudan is standing on the edge of division. Yemen, Jordan. We have in Suez an Indo-Egypt agreement for a special industrial area. There are lessons in what is happening in Egypt for India. And I think it's very important that the government of India addresses this much more purposefully than to demonstrate timidity. It's not an alternative for policy.
You've touched upon several things. Let's take them up one by one.
Yes.
First and foremost, you've said the policy is completely incorrect. Timidity and silence cannot be a policy. What should the policy be according to you?
I would need more information. For you to ask me to define policy, I would certainly be involved in attempting to find an answer to the challenges thrown up here. But that is India's role. To know that amongst the first to enter Gaza, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru had entered Gaza with Gamal Nasser. After that, I was the first one to go to Gaza. These are areas where Indian interests and their footprints are still existent. India is held in a certain esteem. Secondly, I personally think that India has to be consulted, at least involved in speaking to the key actors in Egypt, to be involved in speaking to the key actors, for example, in Jordan.
But let me tell you what mandarins in the Ministry of External Affairs are saying. They're saying except for Bangladesh in 1971, India has never interfered in the internal matters of any other nation.
This is not interference.
And they're also saying that you never know what the end product of a revolution is. Hosni Mubarak could stay back. You don't want to antagonize him given our key interests in Egypt by saying that he should go. That's the general sense, that let's wait and watch and see where the situation ultimately ends up. Is that correct?
In another sense, you're describing exactly the ailment that has brought the Arab world to the situation it is. The Arab world has come to Egypt, for example, let me specify, has come to where it is today, where street is today determining policy. It's not as if President Mubarak or his government or the government in Egypt or rather in Tunisia is determining the shape of events. It's no good saying for the government of India to say, we will watch how events shape up and then we will react. That, I think, is non-policy. That is damaging to India's interests. That really is the last thing that India should be doing.
You said the events on the Arab Street have strong, important ramifications for India. What, according to you, is the message for India?
Look, we must first fully grasp why has this come about? Is it prices? Is it shortages? Is it food prices? Is it corruption? Is it an absence of sunwai, grievance redressal? Now, as I list these events, issues, I'm horrified because I hear echoes of exactly this happening in India. Prices are shooting, grievance redressal, corruption is rampant, nobody is ready to listen. Delhi has become an impossible city. Words like tamiz, tehzeeb, they have all vanished from our life. And there are places, it was horrifying. I read an account this morning of 15 young men having been killed because they were traveling on top of railway carriages and then setting all the carriages on fire. This is anarchy.
But surely you would concede, sir, that there is a crucial difference in that all the countries in Egypt, in Arabia that we've spoken about have all been run by dictators. India is a democracy and it's completely different. Next time when the elections happen, if what you're saying is correct, people have an opportunity to change that.
Of course, but I think you need to temper the self-approbation that you're talking about democracy. They're really private limited companies. Each is a proprietorial concern belonging to a family. So let's caution it. Let's recognize the limits that we have placed ourselves upon our own functioning of democracy. Yes, it's democratic. The countries that we have referred to have not been democratic, not so Jordan. Jordan is a fully democratic country. So it's not, when I draw equations, it's not as if they're exact replicas. Exact replicas you can't even have between two states of the Indian Union. So that is not the right analogy.
The International Red Cross has come out and said that the conditions inside Pakistan are very similar to what we saw in Tunisia. And the president of the Red Cross is very concerned about there being a Tunisia-like uprising inside Pakistan. Given all the events that we've seen in that country for the last several weeks, is that a concern you'd share, sir?
I'm concerned about what happens in my neighborhood in Pakistan, but I'm not impressed by the ability of the Red Cross, given my past experience of their assessment, as to be able to inform us objectively. And surely there is a certain degree of arrogance in suggesting that Red Cross has a God-given ability to judge issues. I'm sorry, I'm not really impressed by Red
So
Crosses.
let's leave Red Cross on the side
Yes.
and talk about whether you feel the flames that started in Tunisia spread to Egypt can engulf Pakistan.
No, there are different flames. That in between lies the Mediterranean and the Arabian Sea, but there are similarities, and those similarities are much nearer to India's difficulties than to Egypt or Tunisia's difficulties. There has been a terrible flood in Pakistan. Their inflation is currently touching 18%. Money has run out. The consequences of that flood is displacement of humanity. They have great problems on the western border with Afghanistan. I personally think the presence of US troops in the region is destabilizing, fundamentally destabilizing. And then the kind of reaction that we have witnessed now, this is the very same Pakistan about which Quaid-e-Azam had spoken, that this is a country which will treat everyone as equal, all faiths. And the rise of, what am I to call it, what has happened, for example, to Governor Salman
Fundamentalism, radicalism maybe?
No, it's
extremism? Extremism?
apostasy. Now, apostasy is part of Pakistani law, yes. There was apostasy, forgive me, even in Great Britain, as part of their law. I would be mistaken in detail if I were to assert that it's still there. It's not that it's part of Pakistan's legal or jurisprudence, it's how you approach apostasy. And the manner in which late Governor Salman Taseer was, even his proper burial was resented by so many in India, that troubles me about where Pakistan is headed.
Where do you think it's heading, sir?
Oh, it must address this question itself. I used to say when I was Foreign Minister, Minister of External Affairs, that a socially comfortable and at ease, economically viable, politically dynamic and democratic Pakistan is good for Pakistan, is good for India and Pakistan, is good for the region. I'm very sorry that it's not headed in that kind of direction.
We're seeing turmoil on the one side, we're also seeing an inability or an unwillingness to move on crucial issues like 2611. And in the midst of all of that, the foreign secretaries of India and Pakistan are going to meet in Thimphu in a few days from now. Is that, according to you, an exercise in futility?
Well, you added this, to this question, you added a number of other issues like 2611. It is because Pakistan began to ride a tiger of extremism. It gave birth to a Frankenstein, a kind of a malevolent energy of extremism, which is now devouring itself. It's turned back. So, of course, it is an issue that today greatly troubles Pakistan, internally also. They have a problem on the western border. They cannot do anything else but to attempt to keep struggling against India in the eastern border. This is the reality. In this reality, to meet in Thimphu, the two foreign secretaries, I don't want to prejudge what they will do. I have no access to information. I wish them well, but I'm not filled with hope about what they will achieve.